Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited.
Thank you for having me.
What got me excited where I was like, I got a podcast with this dude is that your posts on Instagram are great. Like, I think both of us love to have a sense of humor, but we're also like, why not be like a little like, we could be silly, but like, let's add some like things that make people like think a little bit about themselves and like, I don't know, try to be better, I guess. You do that so well.
Thank you so much.
What makes you want to do that? Like, what makes you want to be that shining light?
So real briefly, I'm tall and I smile a lot and I'm friendly. So people just kind of assume that, I come from a couple of dentists in Irvine, at a lot of milk and love, and so not the case. Right. So like raised by single grandma in like government housing. I graduated high school, undocumented, can't go to college, can't get a job. I was a hooker for a minute. I got HIV when I was 19. And so at that point, what happened was somebody sent me to an empowerment workshop, and that was the only thing that was available to me, actually. And so I like threw myself in that world and I studied that, and that is how I live. I got my master practitioner level certification for neurolinguistic programming. I'm deep in the empowerment world. But I didn't tell people because I didn't want people to think I was a weirdo. And so I just did comedy. But on the back end, I was applying all those principles to move myself forward in the comedy world and stuff like that. So like I really am into that world.
It's crazy, like your story being like the ruggedness of the things you've been through, right? But like it's like if you were that, what did you say? Like the kid raised on milk and love in Irvine. Like if you were that kid, like would you have been able to like make our lives, like the outside world life, so much better and share so much of like it's like you have to go through that journey sometimes to be like who you are, to influence everyone and give so much positivity.
Mm-hmm. I agree 1000% because it's like, I don't know. I really think that it's like, I saw how empowerment can work for a person. So you can go from a borderline homeless, HIV positive teenager who was a Craigslist hooker to a headlining comic who writes a book, right? So that's a big, that's a big jump. And I credit the empowerment world and what I learned in that and the application of that to my life for those results.
Do you see like our society? I know these are big questions, Aidan, I'm sorry. But that's all
by the way, I live for this. Okay. Like I nerd out on this all day. I could talk about this all day. So anything like this.
Oh, it makes me so happy.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been like the autistic alienated guy when people start talking about like the most boring, like what TV show was on, like when they're like Game of Thrones, and I'm like, I cannot relate. I don't know if I am human. And I like slowly back away from the conversation. But if like you sit down, you're like, let's talk about some Alan Watts shit right now. I'm like,
oh my God,
okay, nature of reality. Right?
Ram Dass, Alan Watts all day. I go to sleep with them on, literally. Like,
that's one of my favorites is falling asleep to Alan Watts, weird Alan Watts recordings.
Great.
But I'm always interested in like the ever like changing ways of society, and in an effort to like connect like the stuff that you and I might be passionate about and the way that I see the world working. I hang out in so many circles, right? And in real estate, I'm around a whole different kind of personality type of like my other people that I work with that are actually realtors, and then like clients. Like you can't be like uber political and like very much like hard on your sleeve, like here's what I believe politics and you better believe it or I'm not working with you. It's like it's just not the way it is. Like you look at people and you go like, oh, this is a human being and they're probably have different opinions than me, but we got to get along because we got work to do, right?
Right.
So I'm always around all these different people. So I'm hearing like a lot of like what this group is saying, what that group's saying, like people muttering this under their breath and that under their breath. And I hear so much about like from like more conservative people and more right-leaning people about how And they love like self-empowerment and self-discipline and mastery and all that kind of stuff. I hear so much about how like, people on the left they're just communists. They want everything to be done for them. They don't want to work for anything and blah blah blah. And I hear that in their podcasts, and I hear it in there, and not blaming anyone, just saying, just listening with my fly on the wall, like, oh, interesting, right?
Yeah.
And I know in a lot of my friends that are very on other sides of politics, of like the liberal side of politics, whatever you want to call it, they don't appreciate, a lot of them don't seem to appreciate like as much like that get her done attitude, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't appreciate that, like, hey, like no one's gonna save me out of this. Like I really do have to, like, as the saying goes, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, even though that doesn't make sense with physics. But they don't appreciate that, right? And I have friends that are like, they love to just be like, I am the victim. And if you aren't a victim, they hate you for it. If you're like, well, I've had stuff in my life that I'm a victim for, but I'm not going to let that define me. And they get mad at you and they're like, no, like the victim is sacred. How do we, first of all, what's your view on that? If I'm like, if what I'm seeing is like a random sample, or if it's just in my interactions, my microculture. And then my second question is, these are big, I'm sorry for giving you so much homework. My second question is, how do you think we can like get the conversation going again and kind of like get people like a little bit more empathy from the side that thinks that anyone that's that life isn't perfect, it's their fault, and a little bit more like, hey, like stop bitching and complaining and start like doing some of the work from the side that's like, it's everyone else's fault. Like, how do you think we bring that together and get people like loving and growing again?
Okay.
For president, we want you to be the president. Answer this correctly. This is the debate.
I have a perspective on this. I don't know. I mean, okay, first of all, we don't know what we don't know, right? So first of all, I can tell you this right now, and in a year I could be like, boy, I gave John a terrible answer. But this is the answer from my current perspective as it stands.
Okay.
It's both, right? So you must take charge of your experience. But also, it's like this. There needs to be empathy and programs and all of that for people who are hard up. So I'm going to give you an example from my personal life. All right. So I got HIV when I was 19 years old. I was an undocumented immigrant, right? Upon researching what was available to me, I found a place called Asian Pacific Islander Wellness Center that offered testing and, resources at, no cost to me, right? Because I couldn't afford it. And they saved my life. That is support. That is help for the needy. And so for me to sit here and go, I'm empowered and I did it by myself is bullcrap, because I utilize the resources that are available to me that from people who wanted to lend a helping hand. But you can't sit there and go, no one cares. You must take responsibility for what happened in your life and seek out resources that are available to you and utilize them, right? Mm-hmm. And so it is bullshit to say, I'm doing this all by myself. Even if, okay, like say they built their business, okay, the roads were paved with tax dollars over time. There were people who were educated from high school at no cost to you, and you're hiring them to make money off of them. So you're not doing anything on your own. But you're also not a complete victim, because there are resources out there if you look. So you must utilize and work symbiotically with whatever's available to you, and that's your responsibility. That's my opinion on this.
Oh, it's beautiful. I mean, I visually, like, I almost see like the yin and yang as you're saying that, because it's like, it's like when I get really silent and I'm thinking to myself about stuff, and I get caught up in the linguistics in the brain, and they start firing off, and you're like, whoa, like be still, like just be. And like balance just always comes back. Like the term and the feeling of balance just always comes back. I see like a cosmic, like ride on a bike or a surfboard or a skateboard. Like it really is like, you can't have too much of this or too much of that, or the balance doesn't work. And
people who hold really hard to a point of view, like, let's get to the bootstraps, or I'm a victim, those people, they are using that because they're using it for an identity of some sort. They need that. They need that to be alive in order for them to have some sort of identity. Most people that I know that I actually think are truly empowered tend to have a broader perspective. Like, some of this is true and some of this is true, and all of that can kind of work, and then they kind of make their own way.
Yeah, I agree, and that's, you're almost saying that they're balanced, right?
Yeah.
Like, because they're taking an info and they're not joining any tribal thing. They're just saying like, "Ooh, this is actually valuable. Oh, that's a blind spot. Ooh, this is valuable. Oh, that's a blind spot." And then, oh my gosh, there's so much. Oh man, I love it. Oh, dude, so good.
So fun, good. Right? I love this kind of stuff. It's so fun.
So if somebody's listening to this and they're like, I find like you could be hearing this right now and it could go in one ear and you'd be like, oh, that's great and all, but like, how does that get applied?
Unless you want to change your perspective, you're not going to. So if you are a 16-year-old going, well, it's everybody else's fault. Okay, that perspective will be the one you hold, and no amount of convincing will convince you otherwise until, and this is what happens, if you hold a perspective that is not true, the pain that you will incur in your life will get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until you can no longer take it and it'll break you. Then you will be forced to take a new perspective. So those people are just going to hit a wall at some point because of their perspective that they're holding. If they are at that point and they're like, oh, I want to change my perspective to see how I can advance, then they can change. But from what you're telling me, well, that person, blah, 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 and that person, blah, 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 if they hold such a hard perspective like that, they're not going to until their pain gets unbearable and they will be forced into a situation where they have to reevaluate.
The indulgence of tribalism is almost irresistible, the way a really deep fried carby like chicken sandwich that I know I shouldn't be eating is irresistible. And I'm like, I just have to indulge. I'm like looking at everyone like, I know I'm naughty. Like, I have to eat this. And I feel like people indulge in tribalism this way now, where they know better. Their intelligence knows this isn't good for them. It's not good for humanity. But they just indulge it. It just feels too good to be like, I got the logo. I'm swinging the flag. I'm on this team. Fuck you guys. And no matter what side it is, I'm just like, they're stuck in like an addiction. Like, what step do they take? Like, I put down the food. I get it away from me. I'm like, I don't want to be around when you're eating that right now unless it's cheat day. What's their cheat day and how do they?
Well, do you know about emotional hierarchy?
No, not like you. You explain to me. I suck at anything school or organized. I'm like, nah, I don't remember that chart. I'm going to go outside and walk around.
Hierarchy. There's like different tiers of emotion. It's in two categories, positive, negative, right?
Okay.
But here's the thing. Positive actually is feeling empowered, Negative is feeling powerless. When you're in a negative emotional state, it generally, the origination comes from a feeling of powerlessness, actually. Like you don't feel in control. And so when you're responding and you're having a negative emotion, it is a response to a feeling of powerlessness.
Yep.
So within that, there's all kinds of things, right? So there's powerless depression. My life, I can't change my life. There is blame. That person's fault. Still, not my fault. Anger. I've been violated. Still, not my fault. Frustration. This is not going my way. Still, not my fault. Right?
Yeah.
So
I'm laughing because I'm like seeing it in my life and everything that when I make those decisions, when I'm like, that's why I'm laughing. I'm smiling because I'm going like, yep, I thought about that last night when I got mad at my wife because my kids were driving me crazy. I've tried to blame someone. Like, it's totally. All right, go on. Sorry.
But here's the thing. It's like when you're there's also a scale within the disempowered negative emotion.
Yeah.
Right? So this is what happens. The lowest state that you can experience in the negative is depression, powerless. This is how Trump got elected, by the way, if I may. I mean, if you really want to get it.
No, yeah, go for it.
So many people in the world feel so powerless in this world, like so powerless, like absolutely feels terrible about it. They feel totally, terrible. The scale goes like this. There's a powerlessness, depression, and self-hatred and failure. And blame is actually a step up from that.
Oh.
So it feels better to blame than to feel failure.
Is it like a form of purging, like to blame, like to get it out? What is it?
it's at least energy. There's 3 tiers of emotion. There's positive,
Yep.
energized positive, and energized negative and de-energized negative.
Okay.
De-energized negative is, I'm a failure. I can't get out of bed. I'm not worth living. De-energized negative. There's no energy. It's out.
Okay.
Energized negative is, fuck that. Anger. Like outward, at least there's some energy there, which feels good to somebody who feels powerlessness. Like that energy is the best emotion they have access to from their perspective. Yeah. So it's either blame or de-energized negative. And so what these people are fighting for actually is the best feeling tone that they can have access to. Now, if you're a person in a small town and your plant's closed or whatever, I don't know, and you feel like, I feel like a failure as a father, I can't provide for my family, I'm making $8 an hour at the Dollar General, I live in a trailer. And then it's also compounded by, I'm sorry to say it like this, but if you're in that situation and then you turn on TV and then you see Hicks being portrayed as these idiotic, racist people, and then they're like, my life is terrible. Where's my white privilege? I feel horrible.
Oh, yeah.
Someone comes along and goes, immigrants. That gets, yeah. That blame for them is the best emotional point they have access to, given their map of the world.
Totally.
So somebody has made them feel better. So that is how he won. Because so many people are powerless and they feel so powerless.
Oh, yeah.
And so at least he got them to have some energy.
I was trying to explain this to my mother-in-law because we were talking about it, and some people are convinced that like Russia did this. I was like, there's like it's like that Carl Sagan. It's like the Carl Sagan explanation, and Jimmy Dore talks about this too. It's like you don't need to add in these extra conspiracy ingredients for you have enough evidence right in front of you that just shows exactly what happened. And you said it right now too, telling somebody even not totally broke down on their luck people about their privilege all the time is like you only just push people farther into this corner of like privilege. I'm stressed out, pulling my hair out. My cousin just died. My parents just got divorced. This is happening. I just lost the house. And like privilege, like I'm, it's just interesting, the interesting psychology in there.
But also it's this is why I get upset with politics, because on both sides, right? Just like Trump's like blame, right? And then on the other side, they're like white privilege. So what is that? They're actually using division tactics for their thing. We have a problem with privilege and we need to fight against those racists over there. So we need to get in and put policies in place. And so you better vote with me because there's a problem, which drives fear in people. That's unreasonable. So there's people over here who are like, ooh, those people are dangerous. Screw that. And then these people over here are like, oh, and Trump will be like, you get me in and I'll build a wall to make sure that you get your job back. Because they are the reason for your suffering. And they're like, oh, okay. Oh, those people, dangerous. So it's very unethical. I think it's psychological warfare. It's ridiculous.
Oh, it is crazy. It's crazy. No, dude, I mean, I wish I could just press a button with your laugh at the end of it after those things all the time. It's like, everything's fine. We just got Aidan's laugh. Everything. It's all fun. It's a South Park episode.
Now, like I said, hey, I might have a new perspective, and I was like, boy, well, that's full of shit. I don't know.
I love that about you, and I love that about you, that you could have that perspective, that you could have a new perspective, and I feel the same way. And I've had people make me feel guilty that I don't stick to some sort of perspective, and that I should always stick to the same thing, or they give it to politicians. She changed her stance, he changed his stance, and it's like, that means they got new information taken in.
Yeah.
And then they changed, and it's okay. I was talking to a buddy about spirituality a few years ago about this, and I was like, everyone is they think you're either atheist or you're an insane religious person. And it's like, you can say, I'm not atheist. I'm also like, okay, that one day I wake up and I'm atheist, and then the next day I have full, feelings and emotions and understanding of higher powers, and changing again later. And there's just so much in our society that's so old fashioned to be it's almost like the marketing of Amazon and databases as consumers and slaves and all this stuff. We should just be the same thing forever so that we're predictable, so that we can be sold to and marketed to and sold off. And it's like, no, you can be whatever you want. Huh?
People love the feeling of security and surety.
Yeah, I do too.
And they will hold on. But the only true perspective is the only true perspective is actually we don't know what we don't know. That's it. We don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
So I can't say that God doesn't exist, because what if he literally appears tomorrow and goes, I'm God and I'm here? Like, I can't. What am I going to do? I have the perspective that God doesn't exist, so I'm going to hold that. No. You get new information. You don't know what you don't know. I don't know what I don't know. But from my current perspective, this seems right. That's it. That's the truth.
So what are simple steps to people that are locked into that indulgence of addiction to sameness, to security, to their tribe? Like, there's got to be like some simple steps.
Well, if they want to make a different choice, then they have to want to.
And if they want to, they're like, what do? They start making a list and go like, I'm just going to start small. And instead of getting up in the morning at 7:00, I'm going to get up at 7:15. And instead of having eggs tomorrow, I'm going to microwave a pizza. Like, do they just try to just switch things up for themselves? Or is there like you know what I mean? Like ways that you keep track of yourself in conversation. You'd be like, oh, I said I wasn't going to do that. I just did it. And you know what I mean?
Emotions are a great indicator, right? I love emotions, right? And I didn't used to, but
Put that on a t-shirt, folks.
I love emotions because it'll tell you like what's getting in your mind. So like as I live life, I encounter things that thoughts that make me go, or like I feel what that thought feels like. When I experience a negative emotion in relation to a thought I'm having, that tells me that thought is creating, literally, it's like this. Like the pattern is thoughts create emotions, which create action, which create the result that you get.
Okay.
Thoughts, emotions, actions, results, right?
Let's say it together. Thoughts, emotions, actions, results. That'll help people memorize it.
So then as you're going through your day, if you notice, ooh, that thought makes me feel bad, then what is that thought? And you can choose a different thought deliberately, but this is where I think the affirmation thing is completely ridiculous. You can't go from, I feel like an ugly piece of shit, to I'm the most beautiful person in the world, because then you're lying to yourself. You can't deny what you're experiencing. You need to actually embrace where you are.
It's almost like you're not building trust with yourself when you do that. You're like, you're not building inner trust.
Pretty soon you're ugly and a liar. You know what are you going to do? What are you going to do with that? So if you feel like,
ladies and gentlemen, he's a comedian.
Thank you.
Oh, dude, so fun. So good. I love it though. It's so
if you feel like this, if you feel like, how about this? Like, so if you have a perspective that Mexican people are lazy, and then, you kind of live life that way, and then you're like, I don't want to feel like that.
Oh yeah. To not want to feel negative about somebody?
You can't go from, honestly, there's people who try, Mexican people are lazy, to Mexican people are the most beautiful people, the awesome people. That's not, okay, so what about this? When you pick a new belief deliberately, 2 pieces of criteria, this is in my book, okay. 2 pieces of criteria. It must feel better to you, and it must be irrefutably true. Both those things have to be in play. Because, look, here's the deal. Your name is John. My name is Aidan. That is an objective truth. A subjective truth is I'm handsome, I'm ugly, I'm sexy, I'm so unlovable. All of those things are meanings that are subjective. So you got to look at the thoughts you're having and see, is this an objective truth or a subjective truth that I have made into my personal truth? Then you go, that subjective truth causes me pain. Then you can pick a new subjective truth. Mexican people are worthless or whatever the hell. You go from there to, I've met some Mexican people that I've had great experiences with. That's so some people are all right. Then you evidence that. You evidence all the times that after a minute or two, this is how emotional momentum works. After a minute or two of that, it starts picking up on its own. So you go, oh, well, I met, I'm going to sound so racist. I met Jose at the Comedy Store, and he's such a nice guy. He invited me over to dinner. Then I met this guy. Then I met that guy. And this person and that person and this person was my friend. And this person had a positive effect on my life. And you start evidencing that purposefully until your new subjective truth that you're holding is that Mexican people, they can be all right. That dominates over this former belief. And it is irrefutably true. You can't say that some Mexican people are all right is unarguable. How about this? Aidan feels like he's an ugly piece of shit. Some people think I'm handsome. That is irrefutably true. I've been told that. I can evidence that. I can't argue with it.
Yes. So that's an objective truth that you have to be able to be honest with yourself. Like, hey, some people have told me that I'm handsome and believe that I'm handsome. So I can't keep telling myself that I'm an ugly piece of shit because it just doesn't match up with reality.
That's true, right?
Okay.
So it's then you can actually, this is how I got over a lot of my self issues. I would have a feeling about myself and then not like it. And I would incrementally move up. So what I talk about this in my book again, I almost hooked up with a homeless guy in Reno.
Sounds like a great Johnny Cash song.
It was
just to watch him come. So
I met him at the lobby of the El Dorado, and literally he walked in and security went to him, was like, "You can't be in here, sir." And I was like,
red flag.
He's with me. And everybody just looked and they were like, all right. And I sat down with him, and afterwards, it's luckily I didn't sleep with him, but he was hot. When he wasn't smiling, he had no teeth, but he was hot. So when I went back to my hotel room, I was like, I'm such a loser. And then I was like, well, I'm not a loser all of the time. That is an irrefutable.
I think there's an ingredient that I'm noticing here in this form of what do you call it, behavioral therapy, is that it's incremental. It doesn't work overnight, and that's a huge thing about our society that I feel like a lot of us have problems with. Is this isn't a button push or something you can buy really quick that fixes everything. This is you have to have patience and discipline, and you have to work on this craft of getting better at exactly what you're talking about now, because you got to make these incremental changes to go from being you're talking about the racist thing with the Mexican people, to go from there to, hey, Mexican people are just like everybody else. We're all people, and some of us are great and some of us aren't. But you can't just go there in one day. You have to work on this, right?
I think I was racist before. If I may,
this is all about freedom of speech.
No, seriously. I remember, I ran a little company where I made bubbles at children's parties, and I had one bad experience with a black hire who didn't turn in the money. And in society, what's the stereotype about black people stealing money or whatever, right? So then I was like, I don't want to hire black people again. I'm being honest. I'm putting it out there.
I appreciate it.
Scary to say. But I took a step back. And you know what is also true? What's also true is it's a black woman who who passed me at the Laugh Factory and gave me my big break in my career. So that Laugh Factory is my home club. You know what's also true? My mentor that I talked to about business concepts, she's a black woman. And the person who helped me write this book, she's a black woman. So I can hold that perspective, but it is a flawed perspective. And it's my responsibility to spot that. So what do? There are amazing people on both ends. And, I'll admit to having fallen into the stereotype, but I'm really proud of the fact that I looked at that and I went, that's not that's not a great thing to do right now. Let's kind of take a look at what the truth is. And the truth is yin and yang, man. And you know what? If I actually did the math, I was heavily influenced by the media. Let's be honest. Like, the media actually, over many years, does portray Black people like thieves and thugs and, you know, whatever. Like, and the truth is, that is what I accepted from the media.
Yeah, you are what you eat. You are the media that you consume, for sure.
And actually, it's so funny. There's a part of your brain called reticular activating system.
Yep.
If you make a decision on something, then the part of your brain literally filters out information that is not in alignment with the beliefs that you currently hold. And if I actually look objectively at my experience in that bubble company, you know what? I have been ripped off by an Asian employee and another white employee as well. I've been ripped off 3 times. And so why did I focus so hyper on the Black person? Why? Because of societal norms that I accepted as truth in my brain, and the reticular activation system kicked in and made an unfair assessment that is not accurate. So it's my responsibility to spot those and make sure I'm living a life that is truthful, not governed by what we're fed in the media, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, man. So much. I can't believe how much gold you just give out. It's just amazing. Dude, you're so brave too with your stories and talking about some of the stuff that you've been through. And another key theme from you is like you mentioned responsibility. It's like so important it's you're culpable. Like it's me who has to figure out, like, what am I indulging in that's hurting me or those around me? Like, what do I need to change if I want to get better as a person? Like, it's up to me to stop and say, yes, maybe the media influenced you in a certain way and influenced someone else in another way. Maybe the government did this to somebody that ruined them that way. Maybe someone from the opposite political side made them think this or that. But at the end of the day, like, it's like, what do I need? It's my job to be aware, self-aware, and maybe not obsessively, because that could be another problem, but to somehow satellite myself, fly around myself and see, like, what is John doing? Or, you know, what is person A doing? Person B doing? What is this other imagine? What are these people doing? What are we doing that we need to catch and be like, it's up to me to not eat that extra scoop of ice cream. Like, it's up to me, you know?
It's like, okay. So it's like, you know, you asked the question, well, how does one shift? Like, I think it's less about, I'm going to make a decision to do this, muscling yourself into a new way. But instead, okay, if I had that racist moment, I'll admit it. And, you know, I have Black friends that I've actually spoken to about this. And they're like, yeah, Aidan, The only people I'm going to get pushback from are probably the white people who need to feel proper. So any Black person listening to this is going to be like, okay, good job, Aidan. So anyway, so the thing is, it's not about muscling myself into what is correct action based on blah, blah, blah. But if I actually am, the key is awareness. So if I'm aware I've been ripped off 3 times, only one of those was by a Black person. And I also am aware that I've been helped very much so by Black people in the community. And I'm aware of the statistics, the factual statistics, the actual what's going on and not my interpretation. Wouldn't you rather make an informed decision based on what is going on instead of your interpretation that is false? Right?
Oh, it's such a great way to look at it. It's like a good sales technique of just letting me know, like, wouldn't you rather make a decision based on what's actually happening other than what you, oh man.
Oh, you have to. Like, I mean, like, or
so
if
true.
You actually want to move forward, wouldn't you want, everybody would want that.
I mean, this is the way that I sell myself on, like, making a change, or when I'm doing something, or when I start to catch my part of my psyche, like, where I'm like, no, John, are you making the right decision? It's like, what? Yeah, oh man. I'm so blown away.
About just like awareness. And when you're aware, why wouldn't you make a decision that is based on what's real? Why wouldn't you? Of course you want to.
And I think if given that choice enough and let soak in, I think some people are so stubborn and so, like, on alert and paranoid for even that as a Trojan horse for helping them grow is still scary for a lot of people. But I think if you let that soak in, like, wouldn't you want, like, don't even make the decision right now. Think about it over the next 2 or 3 days, but you want to make decisions based on truth and reality.
I think those people really deserve empathy as well, whatever side they're on. everybody wants to feel good, okay? Like everybody, okay? So, from their current perspective, and by the way, we don't educate people on mental patterns. We do not educate people on how to run belief systems. We do not educate people on how to use your emotional system.
Yeah, how is this not part of junior high?
It's not, and I thank my lucky friggin' stars that I didn't end up going to college, because you go to college and you learn to memorize history. I'm sorry, I don't mean to demean a college education.
No,
but
please.
I'm like,
this podcast is all about demeaning institutional learning. I'm just joking.
You follow this thing.
Yeah.
But I got an opportunity to kind of learn how to work the mind in the world of empowerment. And it's so priceless. And if people knew this, then the world would be different. It really would.
I 100% agree.
Shame is the greatest negative emotion multiplier. So, and we make an enemy of our emotions. Actually, our emotions are so important because, and this sounds like I'm going off topic, but I'm not. Okay?
No, it's okay.
So it's like sadness, right? Mm-hmm. Sadness is actually a bonding mechanism from from a primal perspective. So way back in the caveman days, it's that sadness that keeps you coming back to your family, that longing that keeps you coming back to your family. So you often hear, new mothers or fathers who are at work and they're like, oh, I miss my baby. The reason why you miss your baby is because you're designed to, you miss your baby and then you come back home to your baby. It's a
feature, not a bug.
Yeah, it's a feature. Anger is actually important too, because anger is like, okay, there's berries. I've collected berries all day, and this asshole comes and tries to take it. Fuck you, it's my berries. Yeah. But this what happens is you have an angry emotion, and people go, "Oh, that's unacceptable. You're crazy," and then they go, "Oh, so." Negative emotion, wrong. And so now what you're supposed to do is, when you experience a negative emotion, make effective changes in your world so that you can move in the direction of the life that you want to go. That's kind of what it's there for. But instead, when we experience a negative emotion, now there's a problem with you. So what do? The problem is no longer what we're facing. The problem becomes our negative emotion. So then we go, let's drink, let's forget about it, let's ignore it, let's pretend like it doesn't exist.
Bury it, yep.
And that causes a whole other set of problems because it leaks out later.
Yeah.
And people don't listen to their emotions. Like, if you're not in love with that woman, you should not marry her. But but society says, oh, you need to marry by the time you're blah, 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 or whatever, and have a kid. Going to line up with that and ignore my emotions because what good has it ever done me? So I don't know. I feel like it's like, and then they feel, when they have that negative emotion, they feel ashamed about it. Like, I'm angry. I shouldn't feel angry. God, I'm a loser for feeling anger. Well, no one's going to know about this. I'm just going to say, and then that makes you feel completely isolated, alone. Your feelings, that will kill you. That'll kill you.
So when people get that negative emotion, when they get that, what's the right way to react to it now? Is to say, like, I always tell my son, I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I teach my 4-year-old, I'm like, take a deep breath. First thing you do is just breathe in through your nose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I always tell him, I was like, and I don't know if this is the right advice or not, I always tell him, just let's figure out a way to solve this problem that doesn't hurt you or anybody else. But I'm hoping that simple direction helps them remember, always just take a step back, take a deep breath, and let's, instead of bury this problem or how not to think about it, it's like, let's figure out a way to solve this problem without hurting you or somebody else. Is that practical advice?
Like, the tricky thing about emotions is so funny. The tricky thing about emotions is you can say something to me and I'll get flared up. I'll get pissed. Yeah. Right or wrong?
Totally.
but I don't have a clear perspective of a good solution from the position of anger. Because there's this thing called the thought momentum, right? When you are angry, the emotion, thought work together. So when you're angry, the thoughts that are going to pop up for you are going to be tainted by the flavor of anger. So your whatever response is not a clear response. It is tainted by the anger, which when you think an angry thought, then it goes here and adds to the negative emotion you got going already, which then triggers another angry thought, then another. So you can get into a spiral. And then what makes it worse is I'm going to pretend like this doesn't exist. And then that makes it worse because it's like you can't not think about a pink elephant. So what I do when I get angry, literally, and you're right, that is correct. I literally, when I'm pissed or super sad or out of control, whatever, I'm angry. I literally will not think. I will focus completely on feeling this feeling. I will note, oh, John made me angry right now. I'm going to take note of that and I'll manage it later. But for right now, I'm going to not think anything right now and focus on the feeling of anger. Where is it in my body? Usually it manifests physically. Oh, here. I even give it a color and a shape. That's an NLP technique. It's red. It's shaped like a star. Great. And I will just sit there with it. And if you sit there with it 2 minutes, 3 minutes, it'll start to dissipate. And then you'll get to your new normal again. Once I get to my new normal again, then I will deal with you with clarity. I can make a wise decision based on where I want to go instead of reacting to my anger. You know?
Yeah.
So, but the intense desire to respond is right there.
And you have to be aware of that. So, like now's not a good time to respond. Now's a good time.
Don't think. Imagine, like, don't think. It's like, okay, this is how I kind of look at it. I am a person who is sitting at a command center, right? Emotion right here. There's a screen for emotion and there's a screen for thought. And the thought screen goes all day long. It'll think everything and it is influenced by emotion. So if I get an angry emotion, the thoughts that are going to pop up are going to be flavored like anger. It is my decision from the person who controls the command center to either buy into that or not. And if this is flashing anger, that's not the time to buy into a thought. Because if I do, it'll just feed that anger and it won't be an objective point of view. It's been my experience. But again, in a year, ask me again.
Oh, I love that. Oh man, dude, I can't believe that. I can't thank you enough for all of the, I hope our listeners get as much out of this as I did. It's just amazing.
Oh, I love this. I nerd out. I love it.
So great. Should we, we're pretty much out of time right now. Should we do the actual fantasy house when your schedule is free again?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. Cause this was I had no idea we were going to talk for like an hour of just gold. It's just crazy.
Was it an hour already?
Let me see.
Oh my God, it's an hour.
Yeah, 49 minutes. Dude.
I didn't know that you were so into this stuff. I kept it a secret because I don't want anybody to know this. Okay, John.
That's why I was excited to have you. I was like, oh man.
I can toot my own horn here, but people are, that's how I run a show that packs out at the Laugh Factory for 4 years and tour and have 2 small businesses and have a relationship. Like, it really makes you super, super effective.
Yeah.
And this is the work I was doing on the back end in order to make that happen. So people just think I'm lucky and happy and but
No, I know you put the work in. And it's just like, man, I just, I'm so excited. I'm like, what do you call it when you're just like, oh man, like so good, so much.
It's so fun.
It's so much fun, and it's important. Like I love the mixing of like comedy and fun and making it entertaining and fun, but also it's so important to me that like if you're listening, because we can all use this. Doesn't matter where you are on the scale of what you're trying to get better at in your life. Like this is all stuff that even if you've mastered every single thing that you just talked about right now, you could use this as a refresher to remind you like, oh yeah, that's another term for that kind of technique, the way Aidan uses that technique, or that's something I was so focused on this thing that I got really good at watching myself for that, but I forgot that I do this still. So it's like, it's just so important. And it's got to be fun because, like, I mean, like, if it's not fun, like, well, let's not bother. It's existing is a dance, as I like to say. It's got to be fun.
You're doing so good. I mean, like, you have a really great perspective, and by the way, like, nowhere near mastery on any of this. Like, really, truly, like, it's like, and if somebody says they're a master at it, they're full of shit.
It's terrifying. Yeah.
They don't know what they don't know either.
Yep.
And that is a truth that cannot be fought against.
I on the smaller scale, that's what I tell people. I have clients day in and day out with whatever's going on in the news. I get texts and calls. What's going on with the market? What's happening with the housing market? What's going on with the market? I was like, I'm going to tell you this right now. There's a joke. Let me check my crystal ball. If another agent tells you they know what's going to happen in 6 months, run. Bullshit. It's what Terrence McKenna used to say it about spirituality. It's like, if someone tells you they understand what's going on, run. And it's the same way with the markets. It's the same way with, like, psychology, self-mastery, anything. Anyone that tells you, like, I got this whole thing covered, I'm great, I'm like,
no, they don't.
Yeah. Walk away from their convertible Mercedes. That's all I can say.
How the freaking Kool-Aid drinking thing happened. Yeah. But people want
that. That's just like what we've been talking about with all the tribalism, all the feeling cozy, even if they know that it's wrong, if that part of their psyche knows that it's not objective truth. There's just something about it it just feels good. There's a dopamine rush that I got the answer and everything's going to be okay, which is probably also in many ways a feature, not a bug, through evolution. But nowadays, it can get used against us.
Well,
by others or by ourselves.
Absolutely.
Well, where should people find you? Got to do a plug. We got to plug your book, and where should they find your stuff?
Okay, so my book is The Art of Being Yay. Find me on aidanpark.com, aidanpark.com. On there are free resources for, being more happy. If you get my book, it's very biographically heavy. It's about, like, how I use the tools that I talk about here to my personal life. Actually, the most important thing that I missed was, real quick, my husband passed away a couple of years ago. I was with him. You might have met him, actually.
I might have.
Yeah, he was with me at every show.
Yeah.
So I was with him for 5 years. He passed away. And what I found is the real solution, the best thing that I learned in all the years of study is, after Michael died, I became, like, suicidal. I was done. And I'm like, you know what? Shit or get off the pot, figure it out. And then I was like, all right, well, I'm going to stay. If I'm going to stay, I can't stay feeling this bad all the time. So I started applying those empowerment tools to joy and happiness, like, so I can cultivate that instead of tangible results. Whereas before it was like, I'm going to make this sale or I'm going to get hired here or whatever. Now it was like, I'm going to feel good. And after just a few months of practice, I did significantly improve my mood. And once that happened, holy crap. And there's a reason for this. Everybody wants to hire a confident person, a happy person, an optimistic person. That is, everybody wants to marry an optimistic, happy, confident person. Everybody wants to be friends with optimistic, happy.
We just want to be around you. Yeah.
And so doors open up that you would never imagine. So I always encourage people, please, 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 if you're in the world of empowerment, make joy your goal and see what fucking happens. Give it a couple of months. See what happens.
Oh, beautiful.
A miracle. Miracles happen.
Oh. You're a beautiful man, and I can't tell you, I'm so glad you made that decision to stay, and thank you for everything you're doing.
Yay! 1-bedroom apartment. That's where I would live. That's my answer.
We don't have to do a follow-up episode. You're like, we already did it. It's a one mover. He's a simple dude. Oh, dude, I love it. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Thank you.